Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming out tonight to Flyleaf Books. We're your local independent bookstore, and we appreciate you coming. Your attendance and book purchases let us have these types of events, so we really appreciate it. This evening, we have the pleasure of hearing from Claude Bemis presenting RODEO HAWKINS and the Daughters of Mayhem. Claude Bemis is the author of 8 children's books. He received the Excellence in Teaching Award from UNC's School of Education for his work in the schools as an author-educator, and he served as North Carolina's Piedmont Laureate. Remember, you can grab a copy of the book up front if you haven't grabbed one yet. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. I'll use my teacher voice. You can hear me okay? So, yeah. Well, welcome, everyone. I am glad you are here tonight. Those of you that I haven't met, I'm John Claude Bemis, and glad to share with you a little bit about this book. So, how many of you here are fans of graphic novels? All right. If you're not, it's okay. We're gonna win you over. But I'm glad to see so many graphic novel fans here. Now, for the kids in particular, although this goes for the adults too, how many of you also enjoy using your imaginations to come up with ideas for stories? Sure can. Yes. Very good. Me too. And so you writers probably know that a lot of times when you're working on a story, you have that light bulb moment. And the light bulb moment is that moment when something happens that just sparks this idea that lights up your imagination. And you just have to start working on this idea, turning it into a story or whatever it is that you're trying to do. And in the past, for me, when I'm working on stories, the light bulb moments have always been something a little bit different. I had a book called The Wooden Prince, where it began with simply a character. This is a retelling of the Pinocchio story. And so the light bulb moment was just thinking about that character that I'd seen so many times and quite honestly didn't really like in a lot of versions of Pinocchio. And I thought, I want to redo that story and do it the way that I want to see this character, Pinocchio, in a fantastical world where they are building these mechanical servants and soldiers. And Pinocchio is one of them, except he's starting to come to life. In another book that I had, The 9-Pound Hammer, which was actually my very first book that was published, the light bulb moment for that one was a world. I'd seen so many fantasy worlds that took place with castles and knights and dragons and wizards and kings and queens. And the light bulb moment for me was, I want to write a story where the fantastical world is something that I could imagine happening here in my own backyard in North Carolina. And so in a lot of the same way a writer like Rick Riordan took Greek mythology and turned it into fantasy stories, I started looking at American folklore and legend and turning that into the ideas for my stories. Now, for the RODEO HAWKINS and the Daughters of Mayhem, it wasn't a character that came first. It was not a world that came first. It was a very unusual light bulb moment. The light bulb moment was simply 3 words. Now, the 3 words came about back when my daughter was in 1st grade. She's now in college, but back when she was in 1st grade, she had to dress up like a vocabulary word. Now, this vocabulary word is not quite the light bulb moment, but she had to dress up like a vocabulary word. I don't know if you can see it, but it says catastrophe. A great disaster, a misfortune. And so she dressed up, like she's lost an eye, and she's all bandaged up and stuff like that. And as a dad will do, I thought it was pretty funny. I thought it was cute. I put it up on Facebook. And then a friend of mine in the comments said, she looks like a daughter of mayhem. Now, when I saw those 3 words, daughter of mayhem, that was the light bulb moment that lit up my imagination. I had to figure, that just sounded so cool to me, that characters could be, who is a daughter of mayhem? Who are these characters? And so it was a very unusual start to begin with the title of a book before I'd even knew what the book was about. Normally you finish a book and then you're scrambling to try to figure out what you're going to title it. But this was one where I started with the title, Daughters of Mayhem, and then that led to this idea of chasing this idea to figure out what the book is. So let me tell you a little bit about RODEO HAWKINS and the Daughters of Mayhem. The main character is not RODEO HAWKINS. And the main character is not a daughter of mayhem. The main character is a kid named Sidney Poblocki. And poor Sidney Poblocki, he comes from very ordinary place. It's actually, this ordinary neighborhood on our earth. He's not from some other unusual place. But he has a very unusual life. Strange things have been happening to him. And he has been with different foster families. But each time he is with a foster family, strange things are happening. With one family, I woke up no longer in bed and somehow stuck in the attic. And with another, I kept breaking everything I touched, even the door handles. Bizarre glowing lights started appearing at night in another place, waking everybody up. My foster families always thought I was being intentionally destructive or mischievous. But of course, he's not intentionally trying to do that, but he doesn't understand why these strange things are happening to him. And so he keeps getting moved around. And so poor Sidney is feeling like he's had enough and he's going to run away. Except he has his one and only friend, this kid named Walt. And so the two of them, as the story begins, they have decided that they are going to run away together. And so on this particular night, Sidney sneaks out of his house, puts on his helmet, hops on his bicycle, heads through the dark neighborhoods to meet up with Walt. Walt, you ready to go? Wait, where's your backpack? I can't do it, Sid. What? Why not? Now, of course, poor Walt. He comes from a family where, his parents, he's grown up with his parents, and he just realizes that he can't just run away from home in this way. And so poor Sidney is feeling all on his own at this time, as if, he's not wanted, but in fact, he is wanted, because as it turns out, there are two very powerful and dangerous groups who have been searching for Sidney Poblocki. The first of them are the Paladins. These are 4 legendary warriors who have been chosen to protect the multiverse. Now, how many of you know what the multiverse is? Have you heard of that? Yeah, sort of. Some people have kind of heard of it. If you're not quite sure what the multiverse is, it's this idea that we live on our earth in our universe, but what if there were lots of other universes out there where there are other versions of our earth, and on these other earths there are other versions of us? And as it turns out, this is the case for the Paladins, have protecting all of this, but they also are searching for every version of this kid, Sidney Poblocki. And when they arrive in this neighborhood, Maldrina and Orlando and Ivory and Titus, the Paladins, Sidney Poblocki is down there somewhere. The last Sidney. It's almost done. I'll start smashing. So they're coming for him. But before they get to him, the other group that has been searching for Sidney Poblocki, really all the Sidney Poblockis, but now the last Sidney, are the Daughters of Mayhem. Now, the Daughters of Mayhem are like the opposite of the Paladins. They do not have a good reputation. They are not protectors of anything. They are a ragtag group of scoundrel girls who some of them are human, as you can see, some of them are not. And they generally like to travel through the multiverse, through all these different worlds, stirring up mayhem, mischief, playing pranks. And so, of course, when they appear in this night, that when Sidney and Walt are trying to figure out what to do, it kind of freaks the two guys out a little bit, naturally, right? So, and the two of them try to take off. Let's get out of here. But before they can get away, they are stopped by the leader of the Daughters of Mayhem, a girl named RODEO HAWKINS, who doesn't let them get away and now has them cornered on the street. We're looking for Sidney Poblocki. You dweebs know him? Know her? Excuse me. Huh? I'm Sidney Poblocki. He's lying. Why would he be lying? Because all the other Sidneys were girls. I'm not lying. What do you want with me? Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, but the more important question right now is probably, what in the hello helicopter is that? Easy, Bugbear. So let me pause the story for just a second and give you a brief introduction to the members of the Daughters of Mayhem, beginning first with Bugbear. Now, Bugbear, she's big, she's hairy, she's scary. She carries this electro blaster. She's armed with this big weapon, but she's also armed with a really big sense of humor as well. She likes to joke around. And, you know, a little fun fact about Bugbear is that she's actually a really good baker, and she has one of the best chocolate chip cookie recipes in all of the multiverse. Up next, we have the Tories. Tori McClory and Tori McClory. I know it's a little confusing. You look at them and you think that they're twins, but they're actually not twins. These are the same girl, just two different versions of the same girl from two different Earths. One of them is from an Earth where there are humans like us. The other one, I don't know if you can tell the difference, but the other one is from an Earth where humans have photosynthetic skin and they have leaves for hair. But you would definitely not want to make any jokes with Tori 2 that whether she needs to see like a gardener to get her hair cut or anything like that, because the Daughters of Mayhem are fiercely loyal and they would not tolerate anyone making fun of any of the Daughters of Mayhem. All right, up next, we have Go. Now, if Bugbear is the muscle for the Daughters of Mayhem, and the Tories are kind of the heart, they're the sweet ones in the group, Go is the brains of the operation, although Go technically does not have brains. Go is a type of being that doesn't even have a body. So what Go can do is just take over other objects as her body. And this comes in super helpful because if the Daughters of Mayhem need a car, Go can just take over a car. If they need an airplane or a helicopter, she can do that. But most of the time, Go likes to inhabit this little toy robot body, which actually comes in quite handy for sneaking in and out of sticky situations. And up next we have Val. Val, the second in command, the lieutenant of the Daughters of Mayhem. She is fearless in battle with her magical moon bow here. She has zero tolerance for boys with stupid questions. She has zero tolerance for boys with questions. She just kind of has zero tolerance for boys in general. But and while she has this very prickly exterior, as you read the story, you might discover that deep down inside, she there is a sweet, tender heart in there somewhere. It's just hard to find sometimes. And last, of course, we have Rodeo Hawkins, the leader of the Daughters of Mayhem, the OD, or original daughter, and she will not let you forget that. Now, while Rodeo Hawkins looks like just kind of a scruffy punk rock tween girl, she is in fact quite a powerful cosmic being. And when you give a overconfident kid this much magical power, they're going to wind up being quite dangerous, not only for her enemies, but for her friends as well. Rodeo, if you want her weapon of choice, you want to guess what she uses as her weapon of choice? Can you tell from the picture?
Yeah.
What are you going to guess? Gum. That's right. She has this weaponized version of her bubble gum that she can use as a whip, as a lasso to tie people up. And yeah, it's kind of gross. It's not very sanitary. But then again, the Daughters of Mayhem don't really care about being hygienic all that much, so it's okay for her. All right, so now back to our story. Now that we've met the Daughters of Mayhem. Now, they, of course, have been trying to figure out this mystery of why the Paladins, these powerful guardians, so-called noble defenders of the multiverse, are searching for the seemingly ordinary kids, or these different versions of the kid, Sydney Pawlowski. And so now they have found the last Sydney Pawlowski. You know, you're kind of in my personal space. Yep, he's telling the truth. This is definitely the last Sidney Poblocki. They're kind of shocked. Bugbear, give me the pen. Bugbear pulls out a regular old yellow magic marker. Not that one, Fuzzbrain, the Talus pen, the one we just bought from Lowdown Pete. Oh, and then Bugbear remembers the right one. She gets out this magic pen. She starts scrawling something on Sidney's head, although he has no idea why this is happening. Hey, that's not cool, Walt says. What is it? What does she write? Dork. Now we're going to find out, of course, that there's something more to this. While Rodeo has her own way of doing things, and they don't always seem all that nice at first, she's actually trying to protect Sidney here. Although it might not seem it from this situation. Go ahead, Bugbear. Punch him. And then Bugbear hands this little cup. What am I supposed to do with this? What do you think you do with Punch? Drink it and hurry up. They'll be here any minute. Who will? And guess who has finally arrived? The first of the paladins, Titus, who, of course, has this is wearing way too little clothing for what is really, comfortable for social situations, but whatever. Yeah, so Titus, Rodeo Hawkins and the Daughters of Mayhem. I should have known you'd show up. That's right, Titus, like a pimple on picture day. Is that underwear or is that just like a furry Speedo? I've always wondered. And then the battle ensues between Titus of the Paladins and the Daughters of Mayhem. And it's looking like a tough battle. Bugbear pulls out her electro blaster, but Titus is pretty tough. He can handle it. Rodeo gets out her bubblegum whip. And in the meantime, Walt and Sidney, what is going on here? What should we do? Run! But of course, there's going to be no running for Sidney. Now, this is only like in the first 15 pages of the book, so I have not spoiled much at all. This is just a setup for the very beginning. And as things go forward, one thing for sure, is that there's going to be a lot of mayhem in store for poor Sidney Poblocki as they are on the run for the Paladins and trying to solve this mystery of why the Paladins are even after Sidney Poblocki in the first place. So what do you think? Does it sound like pretty fun?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Well, thanks. It was super fun to write. And which brings me to a point that some people, a question that I get asked often is, of course, I wrote the book, but a lot of people want to know, did I do the illustrations also? And I did not do the illustrations for the story. So my illustrator on this book is Nicole Miles. And while I live here in North Carolina, not too far from Chapel Hill, Nicole lives outside of London. And so the two of us, when we were collaborating, we weren't getting together in person on this. A lot of this was done, over email and things like that. But the process, just to give you a quick little, because it's kind of interesting. You see these graphic novels, and it's like, how does that even come about? And especially when it's a collaboration. You can imagine that sometimes with the graphic novel, the person who writes it is also the illustrator. So that's a whole different process. But when it's the two of us working together as a team to collaborate on the story began, I worked on it first. And so I came up with the ideas, but then I needed to write a script. But when you write a script, it's a little bit like writing it more like for a movie or for a play than writing it like a book. And I know you probably can't read that very well up here. It's kind of tiny. But when I wrote this script, I'm really not writing it for you as the reader, because you're not going to see this. This is what I kind of wrote for Nicole, my illustrator, so that she would have ideas of how to turn this story into the visuals that the story would become. So for example, this is on the very first page of the story of the script that I wrote, and this is a sketch of what ultimately became the very first page of the book. And I just said my idea for how it might begin is just, it's nighttime over a typically suburban neighborhood as seen from the vantage of a high hill. The windows of the houses are all dark. Everything is quiet. Nobody is about. And then Nicole, turned that into this first image. And then when it says 4 warriors appear in a flash of light, bonk, she does the flash of light, and here they appear, and I describe them. And then I would write the dialogue, because that is the words that you would see that I wrote that would show up in the actual story. And so, for example, I would name the character Orlando. Sidney Poblocki is down there somewhere. Ivory says the last Sidney Poblocki. Maldrina says it's almost done. And then as Titus strides forward down the hill, wielding his warhammer menacingly, he says, let's get smashing. And so I wrote that. I gave that to Nicole. She then turned all that into the images and the dialogue that we see in the speech bubbles. And then the two of us worked together on the story, making little changes and tweaks and things like that until we got the story just right. And then she turned that into what becomes the final art that you get to see in the story. So that's a little bit about the story, but a little bit about the process behind. But if you have some questions that you want to ask, if anyone's curious about anything, I'd be very happy to answer any questions. Yes?
Is this your first graphic novel?
First graphic novel, yes. I've done novels in the past, fantasy adventure kind of novels for young readers, and I've also done one picture book, but this is my first time doing a graphic novel. And there is going to be a second book in the series, which is going to be called RODEO HAWKINS and the Sons of Disaster. That will be coming out in about a year or so. Yes. And Nicole and I are almost finished with it. Yeah.
That was my next.
Yeah. It is almost finished. Nicole was often and I were kind of working almost on both books at the same time. So even after she got through the final art or was working on doing this final art, she was also doing a lot of the sketches for the second book. And so when, in terms of who had to do more work on this book, Nicole had to do way more work than I did, to do all the sketches, to do all the artwork. I mean, it's almost a 250-page book, and so it was a lot of work on her end. It took years to do. So, yes?
Did you tell Nicole that you wanted Paladin to be blue?
No. And so, in fact, yeah, it's fun. That's a great question. I'm glad you asked that, because with all that kind of stuff, if it was not essential to the story, then I left it out. I didn't say anything about anybody's hair color or skin color, except for the Tori 2, who has green skin. Otherwise, I left all that totally up to Nicole. How things would look. Even the way, I noticed the way when she came in and did the neighborhood, in my mind, I was imagining it almost more like maybe a neighborhood you'd find in suburban New Jersey or somewhere like that. But to me, it's like, now that I see it, it's like, I don't know, it looks like Florida, or actually more like California with the hills or something. But she put in palm trees and stuff like that. Who knows? She's from London. Maybe she, But, what is she? But all that kind of look for the character design and a lot of the settings and stuff like that was totally up to her. And that was intentional on my part. I wanted her just to have that creative control to be able to decide how everything would look in the story. So,
how'd you come up with the name Poblocki?
Poblocki, yeah.
Is that a real name?
It is a real name. It is a real name. And so, I don't know, it just had a funny ring to it. I just kind of liked it. Sidney Poblocki. Like all these other characters have these kind of heroic sounding names, Titus and Orlando and all that. And I just felt like Sidney just needed to feel kind of ordinary. Poblocki. Yeah, it's a good name. It's a good name. Yes?
What made you decide to do the lead to graphic novels?
I think I've been a big fan of reading them. I just love, as a reader, it's a different experience reading a graphic novel, and I find it's quicker to read, and I kind of enjoy that, being able to sit down and a lot of times finish the entire book in one sitting. And so it's just something that, as a creative person, I'm always enjoy kind of just trying something new, and this felt like something new and fun to try. So. All right. Well, let's do a couple of. Oh, you have a question, Kurt? Yes.
Why the graphic novel on a TV?
Why is it on the TV? Yeah. Good question. So when I have a normal, like when I wrote some of my other books, I didn't need necessarily the TV. I could just get up here and talk about it and read from the book. But with the graphic novel, if I had the book here, I couldn't hold it up and show you the pictures very well. And so having the TV lets you see the pictures in the book a little bit easier. So just meant to help. But thanks for that question. It's a very good question. Graphic novel is very visual. You need the visuals in it. So we can do some giveaways here for the kids. All right? For the kids. Yeah. We're going to do some Mayhem trivia here. So, all right. Here, let me take the image off that. By the way, just for parents up there, if you want to find out more about me and my books, I'm JohnClaudeBemis.com. And I also put up images about my stories or about other events that I'm doing on Instagram and Facebook. I sometimes actually teach workshops for young writers as well as for adults who are writers. And so if you're ever interested in that kind of thing, that's a good place to find out more about it. Okay, so little Mayhem trivia here. Raise your hand if you can tell me which of the daughters of Mayhem would maybe get her hair cut by a gardener. You remember?
Tori 2.
Tori 2, very good. All right, you win a t-shirt. And so if you want to pick out your size, you're welcome to go. Miss Amy back there will be happy. All right, got a couple more for you too. So how about which of the paladins wears a furry pair of underwear on his body? Titus, very good. All right, excellent. You got a t-shirt. Okay, and you're welcome to pick out a t-shirt anytime you want. Let's see. How about which of the daughters of Mayhem does not have a body? So they take over other things like cars and planes and helicopters. Anyone remember which one that was? Yes! Do you remember?
Bugbear.
Close. You want to try again? She's little, and one of her favorite forms to take is a little toy robot.
Go.
Very good. All right. You got it. You got it correct. All right. And I got one more question. Do you remember the name of the illustrator, her first name, for the daughters of Mayhem? Very good. It is Nicole. Very good. All right. Congratulations, my friends, on winning those. You get a t-shirt as well. All right. Thank you all so much for coming out tonight. We have stickers to give away. If you would like some bubble gum that is not weaponized and not meant to be used in an unhygienic kind of way, you're welcome to grab some. If you haven't gotten a book signed and you would like a book signed, we're very happy to do that. Otherwise, I'm here to chat, and I want to give a big thank you to Alex and Flyleaf for hosting me here tonight. All right. Thank you. Yes.